the reason that I'm here is because the club is seeking change.
He said, well, whether you come or not, you're going to see a completely different Spurs team under me.
My hope and my desire and what I'm going to try and do is give our supporters hope and belief that we're going to embark on something special.
Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. You can follow me at Astetka. You can follow us at Tottenham Depot. This is episode 235, and welcome to June. Welcome to summer. Welcome to a whole lot of news, surprisingly enough, for the Tottenham Hotspur Football Club that we are here to discuss today. We've got Caroline alongside to do it with. She is at CG Stefko. Caroline, how's your June treating you?
Well, so far, small sample size, but it's been all right. I will say I feel like a little bit of that Europa League win high has faded in light of some of the news we got this week, but we're trying to stay positive here.
Yep, it's starting to get into the real stuff. The afterglow is starting to wear off, but we're getting there. Scott is also here. He is at Scott G Bird. Scott, what's going on, my man?
Chilling. I finished a rewatch of Modern Family last night, so I'm pretty heartbroken that that's over. Always tough when you have to wait a couple more years to rewatch a show of that magnitude. But the Champions League helps me get through that, right? Good football match yesterday. I want to point out rocking my South Africa today too. They look just real close to stamping qualification to the 2026 World Cup here in the U.S., which is fucking amazing. Never thought I'd get a chance to potentially see them live next summer. So Bafana, let's go. Four more matches to finish strong, but they're ahead by, I think, 6 points right now, top of the group.
I love that. How many seasons is Modern Family? I watched Modern Family when it was on television. I don't remember
11
seasons,
which is pretty nuts for like a 30-minute sitcom.
Well, and that's probably the last one that will ever go 11 seasons.
100%.
I think The Office, the American version of The Office, I think was like 9 seasons. Like those shows went forever back in the day. But yeah, I should probably put on my list to rewatch is Modern Family. That's a good one.
100%. It's great to rewatch as well, especially like I said, if you give yourself a couple years and you don't quite remember, what happens each episode. That's always solid for a rewatch. But yeah, got to give some love to Modern Family. That show I think did a lot of good for a lot of people. I think every walk of life was able to relate to that show in some way, shape, or form. And shout out to Modern Family. But we're here to talk Spurs, so I'll stop.
No, it's good, man. Nothing happened this week in the realm of Tottenham Hotspur. We got plenty of time to kick it around. No, I'm kidding, of course. It's been a very busy week in Spurs land. Want to first remind everyone, shout out to digitalspurs.com. Rocking my Digital Spurs Spurs Against Nazis hat today. Caroline's got a Digital Spurs hat on as well. Digitalspurs.com is where we go for all of our Tottenham merch, and there is a ton of Europa League Champions merch on digitalspurs.com. If you have not seen it yet, go check it out. Digitalspurs.com and let them know that we here at the Tottenham Depot sent you. Scott, you alluded to it, and I think you said it was a good game, to a good Champions League final that you watched yesterday. I'm not sure which game you watched because it was actually a really shitty match. 5-0 Paris Saint-Germain romp over Inter Milan. And yeah, it's the play-in game to face Spurs. PSG will face Spurs August 18th in the Super Cup, which will be played in Italy. What was your guys' reactions to this match yesterday? I like rushed home from work and I was like all excited, and then I was just kind of like, okay, well, this wasn't even close to a competition. I know Caroline, I feel like I kind of egged you in because I said we were probably going to talk about it a little on the pod. I feel a little bad. I hope you didn't I bailed probably after 65, 70 minutes. I'm not going to lie. I did not see the last goal, but what was your take on the Champions League final?
Well, I did kind of watch it, but really while I was doing other things in the background. And actually for the second half, I turned on the Beckham and Friends, I think is what it's called.
Oh, there you go.
Which
was that any good?
His choice of guest is really like kind of boring to me. It was like Tom Cruise and Tom Brady, I think.
Oh, well, the Tom Cruise thing is obviously, there was a little bit of a movie that just came out recently.
Exactly. So. Yeah. A little promo happening. But yeah, I feel like he could have had a more, let's say, diverse set of guests, perhaps. But they were having fun, and that's what matters. I don't think Inter Milan were having fun. They looked pretty beleaguered anytime I, happened to look up, and their defense was just being torn apart, especially by Doué, the young French guy. So that was kind of a what could have been if he had signed with Spurs moment. But, it's we'll get to watch him again in August, like you said. And he's one of those kind of players that I'm like, I'm just happy to watch play football, wherever he is.
Yeah, I hear you, Scott. Do we have any chance in the Super Cup against this high-powered, young, just dynamic PSG?
I mean, if you look at the fact that we lost like 22 games and finished in 17th place, I know we won the Europa League, but let's take a step back and be realistic. We're probably going to get absolutely just steamrolled by PSG in that UEFA Super Cup. That team is really good. Inter probably had their worst match of the season, at least that I've seen of them, and I do watch a lot of Serie A, so it's not a small sample size when I say that, right? But Acerbi had a really tough match, and he's older than me, and was playing against the most dynamic, threatening. Just you can come up with many words to signify that group, but Acerbi just didn't have what it took against them yesterday. And I think everyone else was just kind of flat for Inter. Inter, you guys probably know, but Inter was on a treble, 4 weeks ago, and it all kind of crumbled. And I think that's pretty tough to play through, probably, right? And then PSG were on the cusp of a treble, but that historic Champions League trophy, which they've craved for so long. So I'm not that surprised, honestly. I did pick Inter to win, but it was one of those matches where you just kind of make a pick, and obviously my Italian bias shines through there. But that it could very much go either way. And I will say I'm very, very, very happy for Luis Enrique. Could throw a couple more varies in there. He's gone through a lot recently in his life, and just looks so happy yesterday, and I'm really happy for him. He's a fantastic coach, and clearly somebody who players can get behind, and just a real tactician as well. So again, not surprised. And like you said, it wasn't a great game, but there was some really good football played by one team, and that was fun to watch.
Yeah, so put it on the calendar, August 18th, Spurs and PSG in the UEFA Super Cup. Spurs' next opportunity to lift a trophy. We'll see. I guess the one benefit Spurs may have going into that match is aren't PSG playing in the Club World Cup, so they're going to have a lot of football between now and then to be playing. It's and a lot of travel. I think if they go all the way to the final, that goes all the way until early August. So or right there close to it. So there will not be a lot of rest for them if they are able to go far in that competition, which it's PSG. You would kind of expect that they do, especially after what we just saw them do in the Champions League. So interesting thing to look out for there. Guys, I want to run through like a little bit of news and notes type of stuff. Stop me whenever anything sounds interesting to you. Just all kinds of just a flood of news came out from Spurs this week. Honestly, we have confirmation Spurs are going to play Newcastle in the preseason while over in Asia this summer. We don't really know the date yet. But we do know that is another confirmed fixture that is going to happen. That's in addition to, of course, Spurs are going to play Arsenal in Hong Kong. That match is set for July 31st. They're also going to play Bayern Munich in Munich August 7th. That'll be a little less than a week before that Super Cup match. So that one will be slotted in there at some point when they're over there in Asia, probably late July, early August, somewhere in that range. The other thing, the club debuted a trailer this week for a documentary on the Europa League win. I don't know if you guys had a chance to see this, but it did feature a really cool clip of Ange Postecoglou's pre-match speech to the team that had me wanting to run through a wall, as those things normally do. It'll be really interesting to talk about that in the context of kind of everything happening right now, but that looked cool. If you haven't seen the trailer for that, I'm sure that will be coming out soon. That's something to take a look at. And then a few moves as well that Spurs have kind of already Spurs have confirmed the departures of a few different players. Fraser Forrester, Alfie Whiteman, Sergio Reguilon, and Timo Werner at the end of his loan are all on the way out. The club has also confirmed that Kevin Danso will be joining permanently following his loan spell after joining in January. The Pierre-Emile Højbjerg loan was also made permanent. He joins Marseille on a permanent basis, but that was always expected. We knew that was going to happen. Any fare thee wells we need to give to these players heading out the door here? I'm sure we could probably make a few jokes about some of them. I didn't realize that Sergio Reguilon was not at all in the Europa League squad, but was like one of the first players to be lifting the trophy, which was kind of wild to me. Kudos to him, I guess, for sneaking in there. But that was pretty wild. But these were the departures confirmed. There was one name that was not confirmed to be a departure, even though we know he's out of contract, and that's Ben Davis. I don't know what to make of that. I don't know if it's a matter of the club wants to maybe make a special announcement for Ben Davis. There are rumors out there that he's working on a free transfer to go play for Wrexham in the Championship, which would be a great move for him, I think. But I did find it interesting that he wasn't a part of this first wave of announcements. Is there anything to be thought of with Ben Davis there?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think the club's putting together something a little more significant, and maybe there's a world where they sign him to another year. I doubt it, but yeah, I think he's one guy you can't just like throw into one tweet, with a group of players who are out the door.
I think that's fair.
I'll also say Alfie Whiteman, just an end of an era, and I'm not even joking when I say that. The dude's been at the club forever and has been just a really sturdy 4-string keeper, and in my opinion, the most attractive member of the squad. So tough to see him go. But yeah, shout to Alfie, who, all jokes aside, to stick around at the club for that long and know you'll never play can't always be fun. So we appreciate him for his service, and hopefully he goes and actually plays some football, probably somewhere in League 1 or 2, right? But we'll see.
Yeah, I think can't always be fun probably describes the experience of all 4 of them who left this summer, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm really happy with the Kevin Danso business. Honestly, I've been really pleased with him. I think that was just a really smart signing of a dependable player who's, going to be able to sort of plug in when we need, and seems to have a really great attitude too. So yeah, no complaints with that one. And with Ben, if they don't give him a proper send off, I will be very upset. So hopefully that's, what's happening right now, the delay. And I feel like the Wrexham move would be interesting, selfishly from the perspective of enjoying that documentary series. It would be fun to see him on there, but we know he's very loyal to Swansea, so I don't know that he would actually want to play for another Welsh club, but I don't know. It's maybe he doesn't have as many opportunities as we might think just because of his age. So it's a tricky one, but hopefully he finds a good place. Or honestly, I could also see him retiring and moving on to the post-playing part of his career, because we know he's got a lot of options there.
And who knows? Maybe that's the announcement that Spurs are just going to add him to the youth setup or something, or who knows? I do find it interesting. There were rumors a while back that there is a clause in his contract that Spurs could add a year to it, and they haven't done so. So I guess that's still out there. I just don't know. The only reason I could think to do that would be your homegrown numbers. When you're looking into going into Champions League next year, you need to up those. We were actually kind of just having a little bit of a conversation because Alistair Gold posted a piece on football.london earlier about just that topic about homegrown going into, you need to up those. That's the only reason I could potentially see Ben Davis sticking around, as just, okay, there's some extra veteran depth on the bench, and hope that he never really has to play. Hope that Spurs are going to add some more, but I doubt it. But that's the only reason I could kind of see it happening.
You can definitely see a world where you sign him to another year to phase him into that coaching role or that scouting role or whatever it is going to be end up doing. I think, like you said, homegrown numbers, veteran leader to have around. He can also play numerous positions. So yeah, I don't think it'd be crazy to sign him to that extra year and then again phase him into whatever's next. Hopefully that's what the club, but yeah, we'll see.
And again, the caveat that we put on all of these summer podcasts that we put out is at the time of recording, because by the time you're listening to this tomorrow, Ben Davis could be at Wrexham. Like, we just don't know at this point, but we're recording this for context about, little afternoon Pacific time in the US on Sunday. So that's what we know to this point. A couple of other just like transfer buzz things. Ryan Mason appears on his way out. It sounds like he's going to take the managerial job at West Bromwich Albion, which kudos to him. Good for him. If that is the case, all the kind of scuttlebutt points to that. And then the only other name I wanted to bring up transfer wise, Scott, unless you have another one, is Johnny Cardoza, because there's a lot of rumors about him going to Atletico Madrid now. He's going to be like a prime target of Atletico Madrid. And I know a lot of Spurs fans were thinking, okay, well, he's going to come in and be a part of this setup for, playing in the number 6 role. And a lot of players, or a lot of fans rather, were excited about that, especially American fans. But if he does end up going to Atletico Madrid, at least Spurs will get, some cash from that deal that they made previously, linking themselves to Cardoza. But what do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, it sounds like that one was pretty hot and heavy as of about 24 hours ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bummer. I do think he's honestly the most talented available 6 this summer. I there's definitely stronger 6s than him, but he had a great year. One of the best midfielders in La Liga, and I'm not surprised that Atletico Madrid is all in on him. But I think it's disappointing in the sense that he came out and essentially stated that he was not interested in a move to Spurs, right? Which I think he probably had to do because of the weird, unheard of clause that we have, right? That what we essentially have equity in him,
right? We essentially like purchased a percent of his sell on if he doesn't come to us, which is
exactly.
Yes.
So it's really weird. I think he had to.
I believe if Todd were here, he would call that Daniel Levy business.
Yeah,
like, that's what that sounds like.
And I think it's well done. It's just a bummer that again he came out and publicly stated that he was not interested in moving to Spurs. Can't blame him. I mean, yeah, we won the Europa League, but we just finished 17th and historically awful season, right? So Atletico is a pretty attractive move if you're him. You stay in Spain. The thing about Johnny too that I think you guys probably know, right? But just to the massive listeners, can we call it that? We'll take that conversation off air. But to the listeners, Johnny did grow up playing in Brazil, right? He plays for the U.S. From a national team perspective, but he's very much Brazilian. And so, again, I understand that Spain and Brazil are very two different places with different languages and all that, but I think it's probably a little more comfortable than maybe the move to England for him at this time since he's been in Spain. Yeah, I'm happy for him. I'm happy from a U.S. men's national team perspective. I think it's really exciting that he'll be playing significant minutes, it looks like, at Atleti. And I would expect him to be playing significant minutes for the U.S. as well. So, but yeah, poor Spurs.
Fair enough. Any other transfer shots we need to get off before we move on to, the guy who's supposed to be coaching them all? All right. Well, let's do this then. Ange Postecoglou's name is still out there, and there's a lot of reports today, as in Sunday morning, from a lot of different places that says Spurs have already made their decision and they are going to sack Ange Postecoglou, and it will be announced this week. None of these reports are reliable. None of them are maybe they're factual, but none of them you can take to the bank. There are other reports out there that say a decision has been made, but it's still not known what Daniel Levy is going to decide to do. I wanted to read this section of Alistair Gold's piece on this from this morning, which confused me because we heard Ange Postecoglou talk weeks back surrounding the Europa League final about how they decided, and he decided, really, it was his decision, but he kind of made it seem like everyone was on board, I think, that once Spurs got through the January window and got into that February time, of course, they were knocked out of the League Cup by Liverpool, knocked out days later by, I believe it was Aston Villa, knocked out of the FA Cup, and kind of realized at that point, sitting there in early to mid-February, that the Premier League, was done and dusted. Spurs weren't going to get relegated, and they also weren't going to get themselves out of the bottom of the table and back up into, European places. So all the eggs were kind of put into one basket, and that was the Europa League. And here's the quote from Alistair Gold from this morning. It says, "Some within the club did not understand Postecoglou's decision to prioritize the Europa League once he felt his injury-ravaged Spurs squad could neither achieve anything in the Premier League nor get relegated, with a feeling that he was putting all of his eggs into one basket." Now, I read that quote out to say, what don't you understand about that? Whoever this random club source is that Ali Gold is citing here and quoting. All of that to say, I'm shocked that this decision has not been announced and made. We are now nearly a full 2 weeks from the Europa League final, and we haven't heard anything regarding Ange Postecoglou's job. The transfer window, by the way, is currently open as we speak right now. We do have this little 10-day period between June 1st and June 10th in which the window is open ahead of the Club World Cup. It'll then close for 6 days and reopen on June 16th, but the business can get done. Like, this is a team with a lot of ambition right now and going into a Champions League despite a 17th place finish that should have some ambition. And I would love to see a signing get over the line here over the next 10 days, a signing or two even. But they don't seem to have a manager in place. They don't seem to have a real structure in place. They don't seem to have anything going on. So where the hell are we? Like, where are we on Ange watch? Are we actually going to be firing this guy this week and then just starting from scratch? That confuses me. I need someone to talk me off the ledge. One of you guys, please. Someone, anyone.
I don't know if I can necessarily.
That's honestly, not good. That's not a good sign.
Just like trying to read the tea leaves here, it kind of feels like if they were planning to keep him, we probably would have known by now. There really would be no reason for delay, especially as you're talking about having this kind of unusual early mini transfer window. If we had that, continuity guaranteed, that would probably strengthen our position in this transfer market to be able to actually make some signings. And I don't know, it kind of feels like the fact that they're still, we don't know. That's probably something we should repeat every episode of this podcast, is like, we do not actually know what is being, decided behind closed doors in the club. But if they're even, somewhat on the fence, that to me suggests that this could end with Ange leaving. And I think, as much as I've been really critical of him many times this season, I think it would be a mistake right now, just from a pure perspective of the fan base is going to revolt. I think a lot of people are going to be really upset by that decision if that's what they do indeed decide. Because winning the Europa League does give him, a little bit of credit in the bank that we feel like probably he should be allowed to spend. And that's not to say that I don't think the club should act swiftly in the fall if things were to start going south quickly again. But I think for myself at this point, I have come around to the idea of thinking that he deserves a chance to at least start the season. But I don't know. A lot of the stuff that's coming out just makes me feel like the club is not leaning in that direction. So it's going to be a weird one. And I wish we could just know now.
Yeah. Scott, what say you?
The interesting thing here, and this is not an original thought. This was brought out to me by someone else not associated with this pod, right? But Spurs obviously don't have to come out and say anything. He's under contract. They should, but that doesn't mean they have to. Also, there's a school of thought that if you come out and say something, it feeds into the media narrative, and is constantly asked again and again and again next season, right? Because we made a thing of it this summer where you could just operate smoothly and say, we won the Europa League, he's under contract, fuck off, everyone. Let's move forward. Again, not saying that's what I would prefer, but that is possible. On the other side of the coin, I think this is very nuanced. There are many people, myself included, who at one point said, even if he wins the Europa League, I think it's probably time to move on because we've been really, really bad. And look, we've been really bad since the 11th game of last season. We've been really bad. But we won the Europa League. There is context behind that. I know we don't like to talk about this. Champions League teams did not drop down. It was a watered down competition, if you will. I know we don't like to say that as Spurs fans. We also look at the 2 legs against Alkmaar. We were poor. We got through. Frankfurt, we were poor for, I don't know, 2 halves maybe. But we got through. And then we were good in the semifinals and the final. And I give Ange a lot of credit there. I'm not advocating for sacking Ange either, right? I'm just kind of walking through all there is to this, in my opinion. So because there were so many people, they're probably like the majority of Spurs fans said we need to sack Ange regardless of what happens. Then we won, and it really felt different, and your perspective changes when that happens, right? But that's just one football game, and there's a massive, massive pile of data that says things haven't gone very well, right? So that's taken into consideration. But for me personally, unless you're bringing in just a massive name, I think it's a mistake. I think if you bring in Thomas Frank or Iraola or Silva, you're going to do nothing next year. You won't win a trophy. You'll finish probably 8th or 9th. You'll scream at Levy, and the cycle will repeat itself. I think Ange could actually win a trophy, and I only say that because the team's very much behind him. Do I think Ange will finish in the top half? Probably not, if I'm being completely honest, next year. But I think he could win a trophy, and that bleeds into a bigger conversation probably. But I think the club considers that, but the club also considers, okay, if we're in December and we have to sack him, now we've wasted another season and we can't bring in a big manager because they were probably snatched up by this point in time. We find ourselves in the cycle we've been in for the last 5 years. So I think there is a school of thought that says you move on from Ange and we appreciate everything that he's done, but it's a very dangerous game to play. I think the only name that we've heard that would make sense to move on from Ange from is Inzaghi. And I know people are going to say, man, Inter was really bad in that final, and they were. But again, that's one football game. Inzaghi's been at Inter for 4 years. He's won 2 Scudettos, 2 Coppa Italias, and he's been to 2 Champions League finals. That's pretty fucking incredible in itself. And Inter had 0 money when he came in. They said, we can't sign anyone unless it's on a free. And he's operating with they are the oldest average 11 in Europe's top 5 leagues. Statistically, that is not an exaggeration. They are the oldest starting 11 over the season in Europe's top 5 leagues. Inzaghi's done a lot with very, very little. And if you look at that team that started yesterday, you've got Dumfries, you've got Bastoni, you've got Lautaro, you've got Barella, and probably Thuram that are really good soccer players. And everyone else is just kind of a role player, right? So Inzaghi's done a lot. And if I look at, I don't mean to go on an Inzaghi rant here, I'll wrap it up shortly, but if I look at our squad, Romero, Danzo, Van de Ven is a hell of a back three, which he would play a 3-5-2. I think you've got fantastic wing backs in Poro and Udogi, Spence. You've got a good midfield core that could play a 3 in Bergvall and Sarr and Bentancur and Madison and Kulusevski. And then up top, you have Solanke, you've got Son, you've got Brennan Johnson. So there are pieces that Inzaghi would look at and say, okay, what I just did with a bunch of elder statesmen, and I say that as someone who matches their age, right? So no disrespect. I look at that young, talented Spurs squad with Romero and Van de Ven, and surprisingly, this Danzo guy. And I could probably do a lot with that team, right? So I don't know. If Inzaghi's available and you keep Ange and then things look really bad in November, which there's a good chance that happens, we have egg on our face. But at the same time, if we sack Ange and bring in Silva or Thomas Frank, et cetera, Areola, we're probably going to have egg on our face as well. So I don't know. It's a really tough decision to make, and I'm glad I'm not the one who has to do it.
So I think you're right to bring up who, if not Ange. That to me is, I wouldn't even say it's number one, but it's a 1A to a 1B, because the 1B to me would be who leaves if Ange leaves, that's currently in the squad. And I think that's a pretty significant piece to this. I definitely think Christian Romero is gone if Ange leaves. I definitely think there's a chance I definitely think there's a chance Mickey Van de Ven's gone. I think there's a chance that a lot of players start to I don't want to use the word revolt, but I'm very close to using like locker room revolt, especially after what just happened a few weeks ago in Bilbao. I do think you're right to point out that like, yeah, there's context to put around all of this. Like I don't think Spurs have been bad since the 11th game of last season. Like I think there have been really good moments. I'll push back a little bit on that.
There's been games, but never a string of there's never been a comprehensive string of performances that were good, in my opinion.
No, but if you can put into context that what we've been talking about with, you know, this period of time with between the injuries and just the all eggs in one basket theory, if you will, I can be someone who buys that theory, especially with what Ange had been given. And what he'd been given was a bunch of kids, and that's his depth. I mean, Archie Gray played in how many different positions this year? You know, like that is what he was handed. And I think that there's a real question. You know, you're talking about like bringing in someone else. That changes the dynamic of the squad to me completely, because you're going to have a new system.
Right.
You're going to have, it's pressing a reset button when I don't think one needs to be pressed. And that's not to say that I don't disagree with anything you said, because 17th place and 38 points is not it. Like, it's very much not it. But that's why this whole conversation just has so much nuance surrounding it. Go ahead, Caroline.
Yeah, I take on everything y'all said. I think the club's in a really tough position because no matter what decision they make, they're taking a risk. Like, giving Ange another Premier League campaign, as we've seen from past results, is a huge gamble. Bringing in a new manager who doesn't know these players, many of whom are very young, is also a huge gamble. And, you know, I'm going to use a word that I don't feel like we've had to bring up in quite a while, but we're still technically in this rebuild. And from that perspective, it kind of would make more sense to continue on the path with the same manager and let him try to see that out. Like I said, I do think the club has to be, you know, like quick to react if things go poorly, because we can't afford to have another Premier League campaign like we just had. Like, that's personally how I feel. I think that would be really damaging to the brand of the club. It just would not be a good look. But yeah, I do think we have this squad that is full of so many young players who, it seems, really trust Ange and are buying into his philosophy. So I think that's why, you know, as much as I totally hear what Scott is saying about the data that we have to look at in terms of, you know, past performance, but I think I've slightly swayed more towards the Ange in camp, just because I think some continuity would probably help us get out of this mess more than bringing in someone new at this point.
I'm glad you bring up the word rebuild, Caroline, because I had said all along when they signed this guy to start, he probably needs 3 seasons. Like, he probably needs 3 seasons to get the squad where it needs to be. And this is obviously the completion of season 2. And it came with just the strangest fucking season you could imagine. Like, let's call a spade a spade. Like, this team finished about as poorly as it could have in the league without being relegated. Definitely as poorly as it could have without being relegated, but also won a European trophy for the first time in 41 years. Like, that matters. It has to matter. And, you know, I am through the struggles and through what we witnessed this past season, I continually was saying, okay, well, maybe it doesn't have to be a full 3 years. Like, maybe we've seen enough. But then you go and win something. And I still am of the mindset that everyone's going to point to the Eric Ten Hag thing at Man United, and I have done so as well. I don't think it's the same thing. The more and more I think about it, I don't think it's an apt comparison, because United were never really on this kind of track that Spurs are on, where Spurs are still building up to something. Even though they have accomplished something already through this, they're still building up to something. Now, if you want to turn around and say, all right, we've reached late November, or we're starting to get into the festive fixtures, and it still is like, Spurs are in 12th and just not looking great. there you go. There's that's probably your answer, because the league competition does have to be better. But here's the real kicker of all of this. How the fuck are you going to navigate trying to be better in the league, trying to compete in the Champions League, and trying to compete in 2 other domestic cups with you currently have?
We can't. I feel like we all know that. We can't.
Well, and that's my thing. Like, I promise you, I'm not trying to sell anyone on sacking Ange. I do think Inzaghi, if he is actually available, is a better choice than Ange. But that's it, mainly because of squad cohesion. But if I ask myself to just rapid fire, take my guts answer on questions like, are we going to be good through November in the league? No. That's my gut. That's my gut instinct. Are we going to do well in the Champions League with Ange? No, I do not believe so. I could be wrong, right? But these are questions that many people are probably asking themselves. And if you find yourself in November and sack him and you bring in a caretaker, we just wasted a lot of time. And these things are being asked. Again, we won the Europa League.
Did you hold on? I'm going to push back really quick. Did you waste a lot of time by doing that? If they wait until November, December, did you though? Did you waste a lot of time?
Because we'll bring in a caretaker, and the season's probably washed at that point.
Well, who knows if they'll bring in a caretaker? I mean, they brought in Jose Mourinho right after they fired Mauricio Pochettino.
But
he was like unemployed at the time, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we don't think there's going to be an unemployed football manager out
we don't know,
in November,
but
December?
I think Scott's point that the current available market of managers is not inspiring to me, at least.
Yeah.
And
I would agree. Thomas Frank does nothing for me.
No, exactly.
Inzaghi, I get your points that you make, Scott, but like
I think he's one of the best managers on the planet. I really believe he's like top 5 managers in current state. Like, Mourinho was washed when we signed him. That's not even comparable. Conte was not. But Conte got us 4th place with a really bad, like really, really poor squad. Worse than the squad we just finished 17th with, right? So he did.
Conte did some really good things at Spurs. He was just an asshole, and nobody liked it. Like, that's. I'm sorry. I hate to be one about it, but
I'm telling you, like, players will respect Inzaghi not only from what I just said at Inter. I'll say it again: 2 Scudettos, 2 Serie A's, and 2 Champions League finals in 4 years. That's fucking insane. Like, that trophy haul in a 4-year period is crazy, along with 2 Champions League finals with an inferior squad in both of those runs, pretty much all through the knockouts, right? Very, very good manager. He'll be respected. He also, I think, like, and I'm not saying you guys, just in general, Spurs fans, we get very Premier League centric, circle like 2010, but Inzaghi is one of the best players to ever play the game, without a doubt, right? And that factors into players' perception of their manager as well. So, again, there's only one name who I think we would not be making mistakes sacking Ange for. It's him. That factors into this for me. But I also will finish this by saying I'm very comfortable with keeping Ange too, because even though my instincts tell me things won't go well, like, I'm just a random person who does a podcast. Things could be very different.
To get back to your point, though, about will we be wasting time if we don't make the decision to let him go now, I think there are 2 ways of thinking about it. One, yes, because we bring in a manager later who is now stuck with players from the summer window that he may not want. But if you look at it from the other perspective, we are supposedly trying to move towards a model of recruitment and even manager recruitment where we're sticking to a distinct style, and, you know, individual players and individual managers are not going to be hugely changing that calculus. So the question is, do we actually believe that's happening? Which is a whole other question. And we know there's a lot of flex happening this summer with, you know, a new CEO coming in, possibly Scott Munn leaving. It's been rumored. There's a lot of moving parts. So I don't know that I feel super confident that we're actually on this path towards like having a cohesive strategy. But, you know, that kind of factors into the decision as well.
Well, and that's where I'm almost of the mindset that if you're bringing a new manager in for this summer, you've already wasted enough time. Like, it should have been done already. That's kind of where I'm at. Because, like I said, the transfer window is open, and you don't have, to your point, Caroline, you don't have your structure truly in place for it already. So like, what exactly are we like? We know Fabio Paratici. Well, we don't know, but we think Fabio Paratici is coming back as well, and what that means for, like you said, Scott Munn or Johan Lange or any of these people. It's all very much up in the air still somehow. But that said, I do want to play a little game here before we get too deep into the pod. Although we're already about 40 minutes in, we've gone way longer on talking about Ange Postecoglou than I thought we might. Although I guess it is a pretty damn big topic because it still hasn't been settled, so I guess it's worthwhile. But I want to play a little bit keep, sell, or loan, and I'm just going to throw out some names, some current members of this squad, and we'll just bounce around on them. And these are not, some of these are going to be really easy, some of these are not going to be really easy. Let's start. I actually want to start with a triumvirate here of youth players who were not really around the club all that much. Let's talk about Alfie Devine, Will Lancashire, and Jamie Donnelly. I think you can classify all of these guys together for the most part, but maybe not. Caroline's shaking her head no. What do we think about these three? Are there differences in them? Caroline, you seem to have the most opinion on these three. What are your thoughts?
I think the one who doesn't belong in that grouping is probably Donnelly. Just from what I've seen of the three of them, he's the one that I definitely feel the most confident in actually having potential to be a first team player one day. And from that perspective, I would like to see him stay with the team for the first half of the season when we have cup games, some of those domestic cup games, he could get game time in just to see how he can handle that sort of top level of football. Cause we know he's only been in League One this season. That's a big jump. But I think then after that, getting him alone for the second half of the season would be good for his development. Whereas the other two, I think still are firmly in the need a loan category.
Scott, where are you at?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on Donnelly. I think if you can get a very specific loan, and I don't know who that is, but a team that plays a very similar style to us, where he's going to be like one of the first names on the team sheet, you consider that. But I tend to agree with you on Donnelly. I think you loan Devine. Now, I think Devine's good enough to hang around the squad if he's comfortable not playing much football, right, and just learning and soaking in and training. Devine's going to be a good player, I think. And then I actually think you sell Lancashire. His loan was really poor, and I just don't think that he's going to be good enough to unseat anybody that's going to be playing striker for this club, and therefore I say sell him for 5-10 million or whatever you can get, probably 5 million, right, and use that to enhance the wage structure. I don't know, but I would sell Lancashire.
The sad thing is that if Mason had already been at West Brom, that loan might have gone better for Lancashire. But
right.
My perspective was that club was kind of in a bit of a transitional period, and that what kind of contributed to him not getting the game time that Spurs thought he was going to get. So it's disappointing it turned out that way.
Yeah.
All right. Next name on the list I want to throw at you guys is Dane Scarlett. What should Spurs be doing with Dane Scarlett this summer?
So, same thing I said about Lancashire.
So, and especially if Ange is around, because I don't get the impression that he believes in Dane. So it'd be for the best.
All right. How about Yang Min Hyuk? We obviously have not seen him yet, but just acquired, and it's now sounds like, this was supposed to be the season where maybe he starts to take over for Sonny on that left wing, but what do we think?
Well, I'll say we can't depend on an 18/19-year-old to start for us. I'm just fucking tired of that game. We've seen where it's gotten us in the league.
I was going to say we did so well with that this season.
Yeah, exactly. It was just really good from Munn and Ange and whoever was involved in that decision, right? But we have not seen anything, so you can't sell him. You just have to loan him, I guess, unless he just wants to train and hang out, which at 19, probably not a horrible decision either, but he's definitely not going to play for us. And his loan at QPR did not go super well. So that factors into that as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think a loan, especially if we bring Tell in on a permanent deal, because he's not going to get game time.
Boy, can we please bring Tell in on a permanent deal? I'll just say that right now. I also want to apologize to listeners if you're hearing any rain or thunder. It's June 1st in Arizona, and there is a thunderstorm happening outside my window. I don't know what's
Crazy.
going on. So if you can hear that, that's what you're hearing in the background right now. All right, let's move on to some more senior members of the squad, some older guys. Let's start with Richarlison. What to be done with Richarlison at this point? Caroline's covering her face for those not watching on the YouTube channel, but Richarlison's a weird one because I mean, we just brought up Tell. You know, we know there's Solanke. There's a lot of other names and a lot of playing time. What do we feel about Richarlison, Scott?
Real quick, I think we also have to say, like, in the context that Ange is staying, I think because it's hard. It's with these guys that actually play football for us, it can be a little bit convoluted. When I think Inzaghi, Richarlison would be really good in the front too, right? So, but let's just say in the Ange system, is that fair?
I mean, it's fair if you want to put that context on it. Absolutely.
Okay, yeah. Open door. Well, I keep Richarlison. I think if Ange is around, he can play on the wing and do a pretty good job. We saw the Europa League run, and if somebody else comes in, then I mean, he just got called into the Brazilian national team, so it's not somebody that I just brush to the side.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it probably goes without saying for me, but on a sentimental level, keep 100% because he's one of my favorite players in the team. But, it's a tough one. And I do agree with Scott. Like, it really comes down to the manager question because I think under Ange, we saw him playing better on the wing. I kind of prefer to see him up top, though, so that complicates it. And, then that also has the domino effect of like, are we signing another striker? I don't know. So the one thing he does have going for him is that he's versatile. You know, he can play across the whole front line. But that goes for a lot of our players. So we almost have like too much of a good thing and not really like solidified starters for some of these positions going into next season. So I don't know. We're not going to loan him. I don't think. That seems pretty absurd. So I hope we keep him. I won't be surprised if we sell him. I'll just cry.
Fair enough. All right, you guys are gonna sense a little bit of a theme with these next handful of names, but I'm gonna start with Rodrigo Bentancur. Keep, sell, loan Rodrigo Bentancur, who played really well down the stretch, especially in the Europa League, obviously in that number 6 role. Scott, what are you doing with Rodrigo Bentancur this summer?
I'm still irritated with Rodgers from his comments in that interview he gave. I have a hard time forgiving stuff like that, and maybe it's something I need to work on. I think forgiveness is a powerful tool. But I probably keep Rodrigo. First of all, I will say again, I'm justifying it to myself. At the full-time whistle, he ran straight over to Sonny. It looks like they've repaired things, and if Sonny can forgive people, then I need to be able to do so as well. We can learn from our mistakes. He's also a very good footballer. And especially considering the situation we're in, you cannot sell one of the most technically gifted and winningest midfielders that you have at your disposal. He has won trophies before his time at Spurs, let us not forget, right? So I'd be keeping Bentancur.
Yeah, the problem for me is that between him and Bissouma, I feel like we've not had any real consistency at the 6th position for a long time. And at the same time, if it's a choice between both of them, I'm keeping Bentancur because I do think he is slightly more consistent and just a better player overall. So I guess keep.
All right, so you're looking ahead because the next name is indeed Bissouma, and obviously you're both going to say goodbye, I would think. I would just add, the Bentancur Bissouma lack of consistency. I think that's mostly been down to injury for the two of them. A little bit of it just streakiness, but there's just been such a lack of consistency in that role, and especially in the Ange system. I thought both of them looked so much better at times when Ange started playing a double pivot and giving them a little bit of extra help, and just kind of altering the game plan, which is also something that I heard Ange Postecoglou is not capable of doing. So I don't know what to believe anymore, to be perfectly honest with you. But I assume both of you are out on him.
Yeah, the thing about Bissouma too is I think not so much the double pivot, but just the defensive nature of the way that we played really benefits Basuma. If you're just going to ask him to sit back and stop incoming attacks, he's pretty good. But don't let him be on the ball. Like, please do not let him be on the ball, right? Especially when you're trying to play out the back, which we pretty much scrapped, like you just talked about, right, in the Europa League run. So, yeah, Basuma really benefited from that shift in tactics, but I would sell him super fast. He'd be the first person I'd be selling.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah,
fair enough.
I can't watch him fall asleep on the ball again for a whole other season. I can't do it.
I think these are the main things that Basuma and I have in common is you don't want them on the ball, although they can just try and fuck shit up when needed. So those are the only two similar things in our games. Let's go to another midfielder, Pape Sarr. I've seen some rumors about Sarr potentially not being long for it at Spurs. What do we think about Pape Sarr after his first couple seasons in Lily White?
I think I had heard that we did not end up getting to count him as club trained, correct? Because we missed the deadline.
I believe that's the case. I believe that is true.
Which is really unfortunate because I feel like if he was counting as a club trained player, that's a very reliable, kind of second string player to have in your team. And I feel bad even calling him second string because I think he has it in him to be a starter. But again, it's a consistency issue, which is just our entire midfield, basically.
I mean, he did also have the assist that led to the Europa League.
He sure did, and that's what I'm talking about. He has.
There's a part of his
moment.
game that is, there's a part of his game that is very attacking, much more so than the previous two midfielders we just spoke about. So I do think there's something to that. Scott, where are you with Sarr?
I'd be keeping Sarr. I don't know a world where you don't. Honestly, I think he was really good last season. This season he was up and down, but the entire team was up and down. We were awful. I just don't think we can talk about anyone having, except for Basuma, anyone having a poor season this year, right? It was really poor. I think he's also very young, runs his ass off. Like you said, the game-winning assist in the European final is pretty great. But he also, as you just mentioned as well, gets in and amongst the goals. I think outside of Madison, he's our most scoring midfielder in the past 2 years, and Madison's a 10. So, that's to be expected. But I'd be keeping Sarr around for sure.
Fair enough. I've only got one more name on this list, and you guys can throw out some more if you want. But the last name I had, also a midfielder, but at times also a fullback, and at times also a center back. That's Archie Gray. I've seen some rumors around Archie Gray's name potentially being loaned back to Leeds or just being sold outright if he's not going to be, around. But I personally think that his versatility and his youth obviously is a benefit to Spurs. I think that he can be a player. I just don't know it's where everyone wants him to be a player, and that's in that number 6 role. But what do you guys think about Archie Gray?
I mean, the idea of selling him is absurd to me.
Same.
I think we have not come anywhere close to seeing him at his best, and yet he has still contributed a lot in his first season. So, like you said, his versatility to me, we can't afford to let him go or even on loan. I feel like we need him in the squad, especially with knowing we're going to be in a 4th competition again next season, and there's going to be a lot of games. So I do hope that we find a way to balance his game time a little better this season, because I think he really got worn out at the end of this one, and it was kind of showing in his performances towards the end. So yeah, just working on the man management portion there.
If you sell or loan Archie Gray, you have to buy a fullback, and I think that tells you everything you need to know right there. He is the backup right back, probably, with Spence as a backup left back next season. Also was really sturdy at center back, as Caroline mentioned, right? The 6, as you mentioned, wasn't great. Ange did bring him on to Seattle Europa League final in the midfield, right? Which says that someone trusts him enough to do that. But yeah, he's a teenager. I think there's no world at all where you don't have Archie Gray, in the 23-man roster next season.
Fair enough. I tend to agree. I just saw the rumors out there. Are there any other names you guys want to throw out? I had a few other names that are technically still on the books for Spurs, like Brian Heel and Manor Solomon, but I think we know that these guys are all gone eventually. Who's the other name you had, Scott?
Kulu. I think people are gonna Kulusevski. Yeah, why don't we throw one at you, Andrew? What are you doing with Kulu?
You know something? I don't think anything can happen this summer with Decky because of his injury.
Yeah,
And that's
point.
kind of the reason that I ignored it. I think that had we not won the Europa League, I think he was certainly off to Manchester City to replace Kevin De Bruyne. That's kind of just the way it felt for much of the season.
Yeah.
I think with the potential of Ange coming back, and again, I emphasize potential, I think there's a chance that Kulusevski sticks around, and I definitely think it happens because of his injury, because I don't think we're going to see him until maybe next calendar year, based on everything I'm reading.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what it sounds like, but that's kind of the only reason I didn't mention him, because I think he's sticking around at least through the summer window, just to kind of see how his rehabilitation kind of shakes out.
We're also dancing around the Romero question, which we don't necessarily have to get into because I feel like we talked about it enough. And
here's the thing, I agree, but I think it's completely tied to the manager. Like, I think if the manager departs, I think there's a real conversation to be had about selling Cuti Romero, and just like it, because here's the, and I not to drag us back into that conversation, but like that whole rebuild thing you brought up, Caroline, it kind of starts over again if you bring in another manager, because you're going to have to bring in another center back to replace Romero. I mean, you may not do it immediately because Kevin Danso, it does exist, but like, I don't think you want to be going in next season with just Kevin Danso and Mickey Van de Ven as your starting center backs. I think you want more than that.
Especially with Radu still out also.
Oh yeah, Radu Dragic, and that's similar to Decky. I can't even have that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely tied to Ange. He came out and said that, but I also think I hate to do this, but let's say we brought Inzaghi in. I think Romero would be chomping at the bit to play for Inzaghi, not only because of his track record of winning trophies, but that system, Benji Pavard, is it Benjamin Pavard? Yeah. Benji Pavard and Alessandro Bastoni were constantly in the box. I mean, those dudes just go on fucking adventure after adventure after adventure in that system. And Romero is not walking away from that opportunity at all. So I want to go down the manager conversation again. I'm going to stop myself. But all I'm saying is I don't think he's only directly tied to Ange. I know the optics tell us that, but I think there's a world where he stays if Ange is sacked as well. And he's under contract, so he may just have to fucking stay. But, yeah, it's definitely a good conversation to have with him.
I don't know if it's a good conversation. It's not a fun conversation. It's just a conversation that
robust.
Many of these conversations today have not been fun, but they're necessary. So,
well, speaking of not fun conversations, Caroline, we've nearly hit the hour mark on this podcast and have not mentioned Spurs women really at all.
Buckle up, folks.
Yeah, if you're ready for some uncomfortable conversations, let's start to have them. Ella Morris has torn her ACL. Did so in her first call up to England training this past week. It is the second ACL tear for Ella Morris. She suffered one about 5 years ago when she was at Southampton. The 22-year-old had a brilliant season for Spurs. She was probably was she the player of the season, Caroline? Like, can we go that far? Like,
she's definitely young player of the season.
She would have been in the conversation for player of the season for me this season. And unfortunately, that's probably done for her for next season. That'll do it. A torn ACL. This news just simply sucks. There's no other way to put it. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And I hate it and don't really want to talk about it, but here we are.
Yeah, I mean, when I got this news alert, I almost threw my phone in anger because I could not believe it. Like, this is, to me, the worst possible player to be out with a pretty close to season-ending injury. Like, we might see her for the last month or two of the season, but it's optimistic. I mean, she's a young player, so she could heal quickly, but this is also her second ACL, which complicates things. So I hate this for her most of all, because I feel like she had really, like you said, come on in leaps and bounds in her first season in the top flight. Like, she was really showing everyone what she could do. She got her first England call up, and for this injury to happen there at training with England is just like doubly cruel. So it's just disheartening, and it really, we're going to have to make some tough decisions in terms of recruitment, because we're going to have to fill that hole somehow. And I'm not sure we're really going to be able to find a player to replace the things that we were hoping she was going to provide next season.
Yeah, maybe she can come back and save us from relegation at the tail end of next season. Sorry.
No, the only thing I'll say that hasn't already been said is just ban international football, ban ACLs, just ban it all, because this is a bummer. This news, without a doubt, and the women's team, as we'll talk about, is not in a good place right now. And then you throw this on top of the pile, and just it hurts.
Did we talk about the FIFA funding, the research among it's a kind of a decent point to at least just touch on it. I don't think we talked about it on the pod. We talked about it in our group chat, but for those who missed it a few weeks back, maybe even a month or two now, FIFA announced that they are funding research into hormonal fluctuations during menstrual cycles among women footballers and how it affects their ligaments. And because apparently ACL injuries are between 2 and 6 times more likely to occur in women than in men. And about 2/3 of the ACL injuries that occur in women's football are non-contact injuries. Now, I'm not 100% sure. I would assume if it was just training that the Ella Morris ACL tear was a non-contact type of injury. It's a rare opportunity to actually praise FIFA for putting some money behind this and this research. If you have not read about it, I urge you to look up some information on it. It's an interesting study, and I think it's something that's important for FIFA to be looking at, because we have seen so many, especially ACLs, but knee injuries in general, non-contact knee injuries in women's football, especially in comparison to men. So I think it's an important thing for them to be looking at as a governing body. This is what imagine a governing body doing something that a governing body is supposed to be doing. So how about that?
Yeah, the fact this is coming from FIFA is shocking in and of itself, because they are not doing anything else right. That's for sure.
For sure. So just a little extra there for you to go look up if you are interested in this story. It's obviously devastating for Ella Morris, and we will hope for her quick return. Spurs women also busy on the contract extension front this week. They have extended contracts for Ash Neville, Olga Atonen, Kit Graham, and Josephine Rybrink. I think there's a couple of question marks here, Caroline. Obviously, the biggest one for me would be Josephine Rybrink, who only joined in January, but made only 6 appearances down the stretch and was not good. I don't know how other to say it. She just didn't perform very well. I know there were a couple of own goals in there. It was just a little bit of a mess. I think the other one that would kind of be a little bit questionable would be Olga Atonen, right?
Yeah, and I think it is important to make the distinction here that these were contract options that the club picked up, not
right.
like
they're like 1 year additions to their
just
current
1 year.
Contract. Yeah,
and,
so 4 more a year for each of those 4 players.
Yeah, I'm personally hoping that in the case of Rybrink, this is like can we get a fee for this player that we brought in on a free?
Sure.
That would be great, because I frankly don't really want to see her in and around the team this season. But Atonen, like we were talking about on the men's side, is very much a manager-dependent player to me. If the
more to come
planning,
on that.
Yeah, if we're planning to go forward with Villaham, this doesn't make any sense to me, because she had very clearly fallen out of favor under him, to the point where she was like visibly in tears on the last game of the season over the situation. And it's a mess, and I don't really know what they're doing with that, frankly. But obviously, Ash and Kit, I think we can all pretty much agree that it's good to see them coming back, especially Kit, because she was, had an ACL tear of her own last season. And I think she deserves the chance to come back from that, because she's been a very important player to us over the years. And also, I feel like we've missed her greatly last season, like just her control in the midfield, her creativity. She brings a lot to the midfield that we've been lacking. So I'm excited to see her back.
Yeah, the only thing I would say that Caroline hasn't said is I do think some of this could be because the new CEO is coming in, and we at least hope from what we're hearing that there will be a stark focus on the women's team. And I think right before someone like that starts, letting 4 players move on maybe doesn't make the most sense, right? Just let this new CEO walk in with with a, I want to say a clean slate, but that's definitely not the right way to say what I'm trying to say, but just like a nice full slate of players that have been there, and then decisions can start being made. Because let's say we do bring a new manager in, and turns out any one of these 4 players would have been, helpful or important towards the system. I don't think that these, because they're options and not new contracts, that tells me that's probably what's happening here.
Well, and also with Ash, I feel like we really had to extend her contract. Barring any recruitment this summer, she's going to have to be starting alongside Amanda Nilden again with Ella Morris's injury. So, yeah, that one was a no-brainer.
And I think you need that tenure for this for not only turnover at the top, but potential managerial turnover as well.
Yeah, Ash Neville at 32 years old played in 26 of the 27 games for Spurs last year. Like she was reliable as hell per usual. So I don't think there's any question you bring a player like that back who's also just been there for so damn. I mean, she's been at the club. What, this will be her 9th season, I think, 8th season, something like that with Spurs. Like it's been a while now. She's been around, and she's the elder stateswoman, if you will, of this club, and she has she's deserving of that. The other signing that was made this week on the Spurs women's side was Martha Thomas. Now she signs a new deal through the 2028 season. This one's a little bit of a head scratcher as well, Caroline. This is a 29-year-old who, obviously, last season, we're not talking about the one that just passed, was outstanding. And most of that was because Bethany England missed most of the season through her injury. Gosh, I feel like we're going through like this. She covered for her because she was hurt, and now she's going to, that's where we are. But this season was vastly a disappointment in comparison to the last. And I'm not saying that she can't recapture the form from 2 seasons ago, but it's only 11 goals and 53 total appearances for the club to this point. I guess you need someone else there up top they've never really been able to get her to play alongside Bethany England. It's really just been one or the other playing at a time. So I don't know. I guess this is another one of those moves that you said it and I'll steal it. It feels very status quo for this club right now.
Exactly. I mean, and again, going back to the manager, whereas Olga Atunen's contract option suggests that he would be leaving, this kind of suggests that he's staying, because we know Martha is his player that he has, I'll just say, stubbornly insisted on keeping in the lineup, even when it was clear that her goal drought was not coming to an end. She had no goals in the league campaign last season, only 1 goal in the League Cup, 1 assist in the league. Those are not the numbers we need from a forward in a team that is already struggling to produce goals. And the length of the contract, I know that we've often talked about the fact that it's overall positive to see longer contracts happening in the women's game, but this is not one that I wanted to be quite that long. So, if it was like 1 year, I think I could rationalize it as she's an experienced backup, but a 3-year deal kind of suggests they think she's going to be contributing for many seasons to come, and I frankly just don't see it. So
well, and not to say that a 29-year-old is ancient. I mean, I just got done praising Ash Neville for playing the way that she has at 32. So there's no telling, like, you can be a really good quality, but you're giving a longer deal to a player that's already that age. I would love to see that kind of deal go to a 24-year-old or a 25-year-old rather than a 29-year-old. But it just seems, like I said, it seems like much of the same. And, you brought up the manager, so we might as well like incorporate that conversation into it. Like on the men's side, we just haven't heard anything. And again, the new CEO, Venkatesham, is coming in this week. And we do believe that he's going to have a lot to say about the direction of all of this, not just on the women's side, but the men's side and everything, the football side of things for this club. And we just don't really know about Robert Villaham yet and whether or not he is going to be around. But these signings do kind of indicate that Spurs are happy to be kind of where they are. And that's not a great place when you consider that they, like the men, finished 1 spot above the relegation zone.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Scott. I'm out of words, so.
No, you're good. I just going to say, I think there's there's like less overall outrage about the women's team right now. One, because unfortunately less people follow the women's team than the men's team for sure. But I think there's a slight variance in expectation on the women's side versus the men's right at this point in time. Not saying there should be, but I think there is. So there's a little less outrage probably. But last season was really, really bad. Equally as bad as the men's season, as you just said, Andrew. Nowhere near good enough.
Well, let's be honest. It was worse because there was no trophy at the end of it. It was
100%.
significantly worse.
I'm looking. Yeah,
I want to save you from the commenters who are going to point that out.
No, and I appreciate that. I'm definitely thinking like league campaigns when I'm having.
Yeah, you're right. It was bad.
But I think it's fair, to point out that the expectations are different for the women's team, and they should be, because we know they're in a different part of their lifespan, I guess I could say.
But even then, they're still falling well below.
We're still falling short of the stated goals that Robert Villeham has espoused. He said that in his second season, the intention was that we would be challenging for a Champions League qualification spot, which for anyone who doesn't follow the WSL very closely, that's top 3. It's not top 4.
Yeah.
So we're so far off of that.
And Spurs finished 11th.
Yeah, exactly.
Did he say he always qualifies for the Champions League in a second season?
Thank God, no.
No, I personally think it's very much time to move on from Robert. I just don't think we've seen enough. And I said it on the last episode or maybe 2 episodes ago, it just kind of he's just been bringing his people into the club, which never bodes well. And it just doesn't speak very highly to his ability to connect himself throughout the footballing world. Right. So I think he's going to underwhelm. And then the Martha Thomas deal, my only hope there is that the CEO looks at the situation and the squad that we need to build, and you've got a Scottish international who has proven to be a goal scorer for sure, albeit last season. We've talked about that enough. But last season was really bad for the entire team. It's kind of like we talked about on the men's side. So maybe there's a hope that she'll turn around, like you said, but maybe it's just the case where we said, in theory, she's one of our better footballers, and we can't be moving on from someone in the state that we're in right now. I don't know, but it was definitely a weird deal.
So I hear what you're saying when it comes to Villeham, in terms of him bringing his own people in. I just feel like and look, this is going to speak a lot to what are our expectations and what are our realities here. But a club like Spurs should not be hiring a coach like Villeham and expecting him to be the one to do all the recruiting. 100%. There should be a recruitment structure in place that he doesn't have to do all of that. I don't think that there are many managers in the men's or women's game these days who are doing all of the recruiting themselves, as well as all the managing and the coaching and the on-field stuff. Villeham should not have been, and I also don't disagree that it's probably time to move on, just because he's been put in an impossible position. And I don't blame Robert Villeham. He seems like a lovely guy. I think he's done about as good a job as he can for honestly, this shit sandwich that he's being expected to serve.
Yeah.
But the one thing I'll quickly add is just that we've seen on the men's side, the players completely rallying behind Ange and basically lobbying for him to stay. It's been dead silence on the women's side, and I think that's pretty telling.
Yeah, it's a good point.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring up the scouting piece. It is not Robert's job to do what I think he failed at, right? And that has to be said. And again, I'm really glad that you called that out for sure. And
I want to be clear too. The expectation for that side of things is for me, it's higher with Venkatesham coming in, because he's proven that he's done it at Arsenal. So I do have a little bit of hope that gets better, but it's a little bit, it's a call me when it happens. I'll see it when I see a type of situation for me.
Yeah, and maybe there's a world where we talked about it a lot last year. We thought the girls played some really good football last season, and maybe there's a world where the CEO believes that Robert is the tactician we need, and with the proper structure around him can do a good
players. Job. Just bring in better players all around. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, thank you. That's
what it comes down to. That's what it comes down to everywhere.
Better manager. There may be a world where that's the case. There's also a world where we find out he's not the tactician that's required. So just like on the men's side, there's a big decision to make there. It's just unfortunately, for reasons I've already said, probably less highlighted in the current Spurs landscape.
No doubt. Before we got out of here, guys, Caroline, you did some really interesting research this week on attendance at Spurs women matches, comparing them to matches at Brisbane Road, where Leyton Orient play, where they play their home games, versus matches at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And what we found kind of adds on to this whole conversation about support or lack thereof for this club. The attendance numbers, when you look at it, are very, very bad for home games being played at Brisbane Road. Or I think it has some kind of a sponsored name now, doesn't it? We're just going to call it Brisbane Road. People know what we're talking about here. But what did you find in your research? Because when you pointed it out to me earlier this week, there was one thing that really stuck out to me.
Yeah, and I'll say just straight off that what inspired this fact finding was seeing a rundown of all the attendances in the NWSL League from the past weekend and thinking to myself, ooh, I know for a fact that Spurs women are not getting anywhere close to that on average. And in fact, I was right. So basically, there was one game in our season that I could not find an attendance number for, and that was our League Cup quarterfinal against West Ham. So that it exists somewhere, but I could not find it. But if you take that out, our average attendance across all competitions was 4,955, which
so
is
we'll call it 5K.
It's a deflating number to begin with.
Right.
If you look at just WSL games, 5,332 on average. However, that is including 3 games that took place at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which our highest attendance of the season was the Arsenal game, 28,852. Obviously nowhere close to filling Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, but still a pretty respectable number, right?
Yeah, you're talking about almost 30,000 people. That's a pretty good deal.
The downside is that the other 2 games that we held at the main stadium did not break 10,000, which is pretty unusual for the games that we hold there. They usually do tend to get closer to that sort of 20,000 average, I feel like. So that was a cause for concern. Another big cause for concern is that our lowest figure in the league this season was 918 versus Everton.
That's 918 people. That's less than 1,000 people.
Exactly. And I'm going to get onto this about like why this is happening, but that's definitely one to flag. And then when you take out all of the main stadium games, we only had 1,625 on average at Brisbane Road, which is, it's got to be one of the lowest in the league. I don't have the numbers for the other teams offhand, but the one that really stuck out to me there, though, is that Everton game. Because if you are someone who follows the team, you know that we tend to have very competitive games against that club. So, in theory, that's a game you can market as one of the most exciting fixtures of the season. But we just don't see the marketing for the Brisbane Road games, period, I feel like.
We don't.
I know people have said that they sometimes have like a banner at the main stadium games. Occasionally during a men's game, you'll see a little ad running across for the women's games. But I think part of it comes down to the way the team and the games themselves are being, promoted. And this is kind of an issue across the whole WSL, is that clubs really heavily rely on the players who play for the Lionesses. Like, those are the players who get marketed. And those are supposed to be the big draws for fans, especially in terms of like bringing in new fans who might not be familiar with the team overall, which, canny listeners will be thinking to themselves, we don't have those consistently. Right. We have Jess Naz, who has been called into a few camps. She's made her, debut appearance, but she's fallen out of favor again. Ella Morris obviously just got her first call up and is not going to be playing with them for a while. And Beth England, I think, unfortunately, it's past the time where she's getting called up to the team. Yeah. And we know Ash Neville never got the chance that she probably deserved.
But you know what? I kind of hate the fact that you have to point to that's
I do too.
And that's the point. Like the club should be doing a better part. And I want to harken back to the numbers that you brought up, because we talked about, I want to talk about the games at Brisbane Road. We're talking about an average of 1,600 fans per match going to those games. That number should be 5,000 minimum. Like there should be 5,000 people in the stands for these games. Now that wouldn't even fill out Brisbane Road. Brisbane Road's about 9,200 capacity. So you're talking about a little bit more than half full, but that's completely fine in my mind for where this club should be right now. And the number of butts that should be in seats, if we're being honest. Right now, the numbers that they are getting for the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium games are pulling their average up to like where it should be already at the their full-time stadium at Brisbane Road. Like that's really, really daunting to me. Like 5,000 should be the minimum, and they should be pulling 30,000 at least. Like you should be half filling the size of the stadium that you're in, at least in my mind, for these WSL games. And Spurs are just not doing that. And that's really, really disappointing. Like when you showed me these numbers this week, I said, okay, that's a problem. Like, and this is why they have a new CEO in place, by the way. This is why this is all happening.
Yes, this has got to honestly be one of his main priorities. Because we've seen, as much as we hate to admit it, Arsenal has the best attendance in the league, hands down. Part of that is that they have transitioned to playing almost all of their games at the Emirates. But the bigger thing is that they have really found a way to engage their fan base and keep them engaged. I don't think Spurs do a very good job of that with Spurs women, frankly. And that kind of shows in the fact that, our average attendance at Brisbane Road has been pretty steady at like the 1,500-ish mark, for the past few seasons. It's not growing. We're not seeing any sort of growth. And in fact, in the main stadium games, we're seeing a decrease. So these have got to be wake-up calls to the club that you've got to find a way to get people excited about the team that we have, which we know doesn't have, consistent lionesses in it, but we still have players who you can find an angle to get people excited about them. And also, I think we don't really lean enough on the sort of one club mentality that we supposedly are operating under. I feel like there's just not a lot of buy-in from fans of the men's team. Definitely not to the level I would like to see. So, these are questions the club needs to grapple with. And I hope that they do, because it's really just not good enough right now.
I think that's really well said. Anything else? You got anything to add, Scott, on that?
Sitting here on mute. Yeah, honestly, I don't have much to add. I think that's really well said. I'm just going to continue to harp on the club doing a better job of promoting the women's team and just caring more about the women's team, and ask fans to do the same. I know Brisbane Road is further north. It is not within the super close proximity of the stadium, but that also doesn't matter. I mean, people are coming in from all over to White Hart Lane, and they can be getting to Brisbane Road as well. And granted, I don't understand the full complexity of the tube system and what that always requires, right? But if you care enough, you'll find a way. And so not only, I guess what I'm saying is, not only does the club need to do a better job, but I ask the fans who are able to be there as well to care a little bit more as well. I certainly would be there if I was in London.
No doubt about it. I think that's going to do it for this episode of the Tottenham Depot. This has been a lengthy one, but we wanted to set up the summer for everyone. And I think we tried to do it. We have to wait for Spurs to actually do it before we can do it. We need to know what they're going to do before how we're going to react to it. So let's make a decision, club, on everything that we need to make a decision on over the next few days. That would be really, really nice. Be sure to check out our episodes on YouTube, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot. You can also leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice to help spread the word about the show. Follow us on social media at Tottenham Depot. You can follow Scott at Scott G. Bird. You can follow Caroline at CG Stefko. And you can follow me at A. Stetka, and follow us at Tottenham Depot. We'll be back with you next week to hopefully discuss some finality and some decisions, and look further ahead to some transfer stuff and everything else going on in the world of Tottenham Hotspur. Until then, as always, come on, you Spurs.